Welcome to Checks and Balances. I'm Michael Vincent. This is James Blair. And this week we've got a very special guest, Matthew Harris, who's going to tell us about one man's property journey.
So we've got Matt with us today for a special two-part series. The first part is Matt talking about how he got started in his property journey. The second part is talking about property development. Matt, we've been trying to get you back on. Unsurprisingly, 2 episodes on yourself, and here you are.
Look, I'm pretty happy to be here. Sunday morning. Usually I wouldn't get out of bed on a Sunday morning for anything really, but this is about me. So I rushed straight in and no one was here.
Yep. And for those watching on Spotify, you'll now notice you get to see our very pretty faces there as well, not just on YouTube. So there you go. Now, today's episode, as I said, there's different ways we can learn. So one is about talking about kind of theories and facts and stats. The other one is learning from other people's kind of what they've gone through, so we can take it and apply it to an extent to our own situation, although this is not personalized financial advice.
Definitely is.
So Matt, I'm really keen. You've got a really interesting story to kind of talk us through today. So tell us, let's start, where did you grow up?
Yeah, I mean, good question, and thanks to you both for having me on again. It's always good to be on your podcast.
We have no choice.
Yeah, you didn't. So I grew up in the Hawke's Bay, so probably a lot of people look at me and the way I conduct myself and probably think, oh, yep, typical Aucklander.
Yeah.
Yep, you didn't have to confirm that so quickly.
Shout out to everyone in Christchurch. Yeah.
But that's not the case. I am from rural Hawke's Bay. I grew up kind of on the edge of farming life and city life, although the city was Napier, not Auckland. And I had a pretty, probably what I'd call typical rural upbringing. I used to go fishing. I used to do a little bit of duck shooting. I used to like to go camping. Had to chop firewood as my chores. Built huts. Went eeling.
Eeling?
Yeah, I used to love eeling.
James, you've been eeling?
Yeah. No, it's against who I am.
And so I sort of had that quite rural upbringing. Most of my family were farmers or in that industry. And I even went to boarding school for a while with all the other farmers' children.
Are you okay?
Look, it depends on who you ask. So I had a pretty wholesome upbringing, and the people around me weren't property investors. They weren't necessarily investors of any sort, although I'm sure my grandparents had, managed funds and things like that. But there was no talk of business. There was no real talk of property or entrepreneurship in any way at all.
Yeah.
So then what was the sort of the thing that got you started into property? What made you sort of think, click, that's the vehicle that I'm going to invest in, that's the one for me? Yeah,
so it's quite a long story, which I'm going to condense into a long but shorter version. So I when I finished high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do really, like a lot of people, so I took a year off. I went and worked at a plastic injection moulding factory.
Oh, yeah?
Napier Tool and Die.
Oh, yeah?
Quite an interesting place, actually.
Yeah.
They used to make all the components for electric fencing.
Yeah.
So the Mark II claw.
Yeah.
So if you didn't grow up on a farm or been anywhere near it, you won't know, but this little claw that you run the wire through. They did all the true test boxes. Yeah. They did some other stuff, paddles and helmets, and it was pretty engineering focused. So they built the die, and then I worked in the bit where they pumped plastic into it to make these things. And I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I wasn't like lots of people were going to gap year and they hate it and they don't like work. I always like to work hard, and I'm pretty ordered in the way I do things, and I was nailing it there. I was doing really, really well. And the year came up, and I knew I had to leave because I knew it wasn't the life for me, but I actually really, really
Simple
enjoyed
life,
it. Yeah, it was really simple. We used to start 6 a.m. in the morning, and we worked till 6 a.m. at night, 1 week. Then we did 2 weeks, 6 till 4:30.
Yeah.
1 week, 6 till 6.
Yeah.
And you stop for 15 minutes in the morning, half an hour at lunchtime, 15 minutes in the afternoon. And that was it.
It's funny how it leaves that impression on you. You can still rattle off the numbers.
Oh, it's great. And everyone, I remember everyone used to go outside for that 15 minutes, and they'd be like, most people just smoked.
Yeah.
And I'd just sit there and kind of talk in the sun and go back in. But so then I went to university, speeding up. I did a commerce degree. And then I left university, and I had to decide what to do. So I started interviewing for jobs, and at that stage I had met a girl back in Hawke's Bay. So I went back to Hawke's Bay for love. Thank you, Rachel.
Rachel.
Rachel. So I went back there and I started interviewing for jobs. And one of those jobs that I interviewed was for Inland Revenue.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I don't really want to work at Inland Revenue.
I understand why.
Yeah, most people do. And the stigma of Inland Revenue even back then was quite high. And I just thought it would be a horrible place. But anyway, I interviewed, first I had to do psychometric testing. Some people might remember.
Yeah.
It was all the rage.
Still is at the banks.
Yeah. And I remember thinking, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
And so I did that, and obviously I passed that. And then I got to the point where they wanted me to come in for an interview.
Yeah.
And so I walk in for this interview, and sitting there at the table is a lady, Wendy, whose kids I used to babysit. Which really surprised me because when I babysitted her kids, I had no idea what she did and probably didn't even care. So anyway, the interview went well and I got the job. So either Wendy got me the job or I got the job on my own merit, but either way, I got the job at Inland Revenue. And I wasn't even sure then that I wanted it.
Yeah.
I get in there and I from the beginning, I found it intensely interesting. I was hired as an investigator, so my job was to maximise the net revenue collected over time by the Commissioner of Inland Revenue.
Yeah.
In short, audit people, review files, make sure the right amount of tax has been paid or the refunds that get dished out were correct. And the analogy I always use really early on is like, it's like a game of sport. And if there's no rules, then you can't really play a game of sport. But the Inland Revenue had a whole heap of rules. You had the Tax Administration Act and you had the Income Tax Act, which kind of govern the rules of engagement.
Yeah.
And then the taxpayers and the government are the two sides that are playing.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed it. So, and also like it was quite... it wasn't as nerdy as you think it was. In those days, there was wasn't a lot of tech. Nowadays, they use a lot of data. But we literally used to get GST returns, run down the list of invoices, pick out ones to check, do the checks, and from that you kind of flowed out of it. And you do some background checks on the taxpayer, and you might look at like assets they owned and companies they were shareholders in, and you just kind of piece it all together. And I really liked it. So I excelled at this job that I didn't really want. And I had some really good mentors there, and I was doing really, really well. And so I started in April 2006. The property market was in full upswing. We're heading towards the GFC.
Yeah. She's on the way up, all right.
We're running into the sun.
Yeah. Honestly. And I remember it because I was a simple country boy at that stage, and this was my first real job, and I hadn't been exposed to a great amounts of wealth, although probably some of the people in my family had some money because the farms were worth money.
Appreciates over time, yeah.
Yeah, but you don't really see it.
No.
You know, there weren't
To you, it's
fancy
just
cars.
a block of land somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you know a lot about this actually. But I suddenly was exposed to wealth and huge wealth. People were making 50% gains on properties in 2 years' time. So we're running into the sun. It's a really great analogy. Credit is easy.
Yeah.
Life is good. And I'm learning the ropes. I'm enjoying myself. 2008, GFC comes on and credit dries up like that.
Yeah.
Music stops and it stops so suddenly that even I'm surprised.
Yeah.
And so it's a great time to be in Inland Revenue because every man and his dog's scrambling. They're claiming refunds on beach houses. They're trying to keep their businesses going. Yeah. And all this happens, and there's all sorts of frauds, there's Ponzi schemes, and there's just people that are operating and trying to get their way out.
Yeah.
And we're seeing the collapse of things like Hanover Finance and
Canterbury.
Canterbury Finance or South Canterbury Finance, Hubbard, lots and lots of big names in New Zealand who and people like is it Jenny Shipley?
Yeah.
Who put her name on various products and was on the board of directors of
a whole lot of finance companies.
Who was getting prosecuted. So it was an interesting time. Fast forward, we're into 2011. By this stage, I have had a good 5 years of work experience. I've seen these people go boom and bust a couple of times, and I have figured out by default what wealth creation looks like. No one has ever told me what wealth creation looks like.
Yeah.
I don't think it's unusual.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's parents sit them down and go, this is how you make money.
Can we just take a very small sidestep? in terms of education in your household around money, you seem to allude to it, but
Yes.
a lot of the stuff we do is around education as power, and then you can kind of go on your own journey. In your household, when you were growing up, what was the discussions like around money?
Yeah, so there were no discussions. The only discussions I remember were about not having enough money. Discussions around buying like shoes for sports events. My brother and I are really good runners at school. We used to do lots of events. And I remember needing spiked running shoes. And my mum was a single mum. And I remember she went out of her way so that we could have those shoes. And I have no idea how she paid for those. Probably she hire purchase or something like that. But I just remember those being the only discussions. There was no planning. There was no, you should save money. You should invest.
So when you did educate yourself about money, was that through what you were just talking about and looking around and seeing what everybody was doing and you kind of put the pieces together?
Pretty much. And I didn't put them together quickly. It took a long time for me to realize what was actually happening was wealth creation. Because I used to study transactions, property transactions especially. We used to study those and we'd pull the title and you'd look that they bought that 5 years ago, 400,000. I remember seeing some properties in Waiheke back in those days that someone had bought for like 400,000 and then after 2011 they were worth 1.5 million. And I remember thinking the massive amount of wealth gain that was going on. I was thinking, how do I do this?
And also you'll be looking at it from the tax perspective as well and going, there's no tax on this. Hang on a second. This is tax free.
And for perspective, for people watching, back then we had a full intention-based regime. So there was no bright line. There was virtually, you could buy and sell a property within 1 year and there was no tax on it, unless you had a pattern. There was no IID numbers for property transactions.
Really?
Honestly, Wild West. IID numbers for property transactions didn't come in until 2016.
Well, if you think about international buyers, right?
Yes.
That's where a lot of that stuff came in. And there was a narrative at one point that the housing market was being completely fueled by overseas buyers. And then once they started getting the IID data, it turned out
they realised it wasn't.
To be fair,
biased.
I reckon the shadiest transaction I ever did at Westpac was a Tyler and his wife who had 4 houses in Remuera. And we asked for the AML documentation and it all arrived like, where did the money come from? Official Chinese government stamps and stuff. He earned like 70 grand a year and his wife earned 30,000. He's got a property portfolio of about $6 million. And I'm like, at the bank, I'm like, is this legit? And they're like, well, it says what we need it to say. And I'm like, okay, I guess we're doing this then.
And that's the way it was. So RLWT came in to stop that offshore leaking. Because you used to be able to be offshore, buy a property, sell it, no ID number, no AML, no
money
tax.
in, money out.
Now they withhold tax, 10% of the sale. Anyway, so all this stuff's going on. It's 2011. And this is how slow I was to figure this whole thing out. I started in 2006. Finally, in 2011, I buy my first house. And I remember going out looking. I did that age-old thing where people go and look at a house and they're like, no. They go look at 5 more houses. They come back to the original.
Always too bad.
That was me, and it was bad. It was a mess. But I'm a good farm boy, so I bought it. And I paid about $260,000 for that property.
Where was the property?
Havelock North. In Hawke's Bay. And that I paid a 5% deposit. And that was all the money I had in the whole world. It took me the whole time to pay off my student loan and save enough for a 5% deposit. I started earning, my first paycheck was $28,000 a year. And probably by then I was probably only earning about $45,000 a year.
2011, few years off the back of a GFC. Any idea what interest rates were then?
I can't quite recall. I think about 5%.
You're probably talking about 5 to 6%.
I remember them being in the 5.45 kind of range.
Because they were still a bit low to try and keep things clicking again.
Okay, so you've got this property. Need a bit of love?
Oh, I needed some love. And I did what lots of Kiwis do. I went and started renovating it. And I started painting. I dug up all the backyard and got rid of some concrete pads. I put a new bathroom in. I just put new handles on the kitchen, but I remember it had been bastardized. It had lino down, and I could tell really quickly that it had nice floors underneath. And it was a bit random in the end because I pulled up the lino and the kitchen was Remu. I pulled up one other room and it was Matai. Very common in New Zealand. They just used native timbers. And they just got another stack and covered it with carpet.
Scraping up lino is either very easy or literally one of the worst 6 hours of your life. It is horrible.
Yeah. And for me, it was the latter.
Yeah.
Using acetate and lip scrapers, pulling up each little nail. Oh, horrible. Anyway, came out beautiful. I lived in there for a little while, and the 2011 was the biggest property boom New Zealand ever seen up until the recent one.
Yeah.
And I got the old pamphlet in the mail, want an appraisal of your house. And I was like, oh, yeah.
Give it a go.
Real estate agent comes around, he says he can get me $300,000 for this house.
And so remind us what you paid for it again?
$260. And I
What do
probably
you think you
spent
spent?
about $12,000 on the reno, which was a lot of money. It took all the money I had after that to get it done.
Yep.
And of course that gets me thinking, there's 30 grand in there, and I only earn about 40 grand a year. So it's nearly my whole salary just in one little thing that I enjoyed.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, this is such a really good reminder about like the power of inflation over time as well.
Yes.
You talk about 30 grand in capital gain, and there's some people whose houses are moving by 30 grand a month, right?
Yep.
But the impact compared to your salary, and when you got that appraisal and was like, "Ooh, we in
You
the
just
money."
see the dollar signs, right? You're like, this is
I
it.
did.
I've cracked it. Yeah.
And probably all the things up to that point started to make sense. It was like a cascade, tink, 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 all the jobs that I've been doing, the inland revenue piece, and wealth creation was really obvious to me. So I didn't sell it at that point. I went to the bank and I got a loan to buy another property using leverage.
So
Sorry,
you're about to ask the same thing I'm about to ask.
how do you find out about leverage?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, friend of mine who's a lawyer, Aaron Roberts is his name. He was visiting Hawke's Bay. He was living in Australia at that time, and he was telling me how he bought 3 properties. And he actually came around looking at those properties for me, that first one, and he was there at that one that I didn't like. And it's funny the things you remember. I haven't really seen him since.
Yeah.
I follow him on LinkedIn and like the odd thing, but I haven't seen him. But he inadvertently had told me about this leverage thing. And I probably had seen it at Inland Revenue, but I hadn't put it together.
Yeah.
So I didn't have the financial education to put it together. So he told me about that. I went and saw the mortgage brokers. He was actually working at the BNZ. His name's Danny Blackman. He's a mortgage broker on his own now. It's funny the things you remember. These people, I remember them because they were part of my journey.
Yeah.
And he said, yes, you can get another mortgage. So I went out to look for another property. And at this stage, mortgagee sales were starting to come around because the cycle was coming down again. And but they weren't like they are now, where like 20 people show up and they bid more than an auction would go for usually. So I ended up buying this house in Tokomaru Drive in Havelock North, and I paid $305,000 for it, and it was worth $410,000 on paper. So this is my first lesson in debt arbitrage. Whether I liked it or not, I just figured out how to create a capital gain out of thin air. And this is the big trick that property investors use to grow their wealth quicker. So I bought that property, and then I went on Hawke's Bay and I renovated and bought a few more properties. And I was predominantly a buy and hold investor.
Okay, but you were renovating them
and keeping them, revaluing them, going again. And I was
the
moving
BRRR
from property to property.
strategy, was it?
Yeah, the BRRRR strategy. So for people who don't know that, that's buy, renovate, revalue. Go again. Repeat.
What I love about that is it's it's not like you fell into it, but you make some smart decisions with some guidance along the way. And we give people guidance as financial advisors, as accountants, as wealth advisors. But it's about who you trust, why you trust them. Obviously a lawyer, friend, you've seen them do it, these sorts of things, and just some little nudges along the way with motivation. I want to do this. I'm going to make a decision. Gets you the outcome, right?
Also motivation, i.e. money.
Yeah. I've got a couple of questions. The first one is, we talk about paralysis by analysis quite a bit.
Yes.
You're an accountant by trade, no offense, but offense. Did you...
None taken, but taken.
Especially at the start, were you quite good at getting on with the show quite quickly?
Yes.
Or did you kind of go, I'm not too sure what I should do here?
I think because I stumbled into it rather than planned it, I didn't suffer from that too much. And I was living in these houses. So there's 2 purposes. So roof over my head, passion, I enjoyed renovating them. I figured out really quickly that I enjoyed doing that kind of thing. And actually I had a background of like doing up cars, and other my brother and I did up a tractor once and a motorbike. Like we were good at, we did a Massey Ferguson from a family friend. He just left in his paddock. We're like, we'll take that. And we got it going again, painted and sold it.
Yeah, nice.
So I had a little penchant for like doing things up and selling them, but I wasn't too analytical on it.
Okay, second question is sometimes more debt people can go like, that's scary, I don't want to be taking on more debt. Did you always understand good debt versus bad debt and investment property debt would get you ahead? Did you ever go, I mean, you're carrying a lot of debt now. Did you ever go at any point, I don't know if this is for me, or you always kind of got it?
No, I always got it, but I didn't necessarily get it. I just realised that this debt thing was helping me accumulate assets, and that the return on those assets was starting to roll quite quickly. And the more debt I could get my hands on, as long as I could handle it, the better off I was going to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I do have a bit of bad debt hanging around every now and then. Debt's debt. But I definitely believe in deploying capital and investing as much of that in fixed assets as I can. So I wouldn't say I just stumbled across it.
Yeah. So you're in the situation where you've got a few properties. You're buying locally around the Hawke's Bay where you grew up. You've done the thing where you went to the mortgagee sale and thought, this is how this game really works. This is how 1 + 1 = 5, not 2 or 3 or whatever. What was the thing that sort of was the catalyst that got you from that into the large property portfolio, and what sort of happened there?
So a little more water has to go under the bridge, actually. So I bought a tender property next, which was really similar, except that I overpaid. But I didn't realise till later that I overpaid. And I didn't overpay. By the time I'd finished, I still made a good gain on it. But no one else was interested, and I just hit too high. So I did that one. Then I decided I'd had enough of inland revenue, which was a big decision. It was a good job. I was doing a bit of property investment on the side, but I knew ultimately that I wasn't going to stay there forever. So I decided to leave. And I went out on my own as an accountant, and I started off doing helping people get through audits. And I realised quite quickly that whilst that was quite good financially, it was very stressful. It's easy when you work at inland revenue, nothing's personal, but when you're working for the client, everything's personal. Also, I had figured out that I couldn't really scale that very easily. Very hard to scale.
The intellectual capital is you.
Yeah, it's me. And I might have 3 PAs helping me, but
at the end of the day,
nothing passive in it. So I decided to be a property accountant. And I liked property, obviously, and it was a niche area. And back then, Xero had come through and cannibalised the accounting industry. Everyone had started moving to fixed fees. Previously, GST returns like $200 or $300. Now they're worth nothing. Just press the button. So I decided to niche myself into property, and that happens quite quickly. So within a year of inland revenue, I had gone accountant, gone property accountant, and then I made the decision to move to Auckland. For opportunity. And literally it happened overnight. I made the decision, packed up, came up to Auckland. My mum lived up here. I stayed with her for about a week. That's all it took for me to find somewhere else to live.
No offence, Phoebe, but I get it.
Love you, Mum, but thank you for taking me in, but I had to keep moving. And I settled in Kingston. I remember thinking quite humorously that was central Auckland. And so fast forward, I'm in the business environment now. Property investment takes a bit of a stay for about a year. I'm hustling. I'm down in Britomart. I've got 1 employee, and I'm trying to get my business going. And I've got all this money sitting in the bank from a property I'd sold. And I always regret selling properties. I'm a buy and hold investor.
Why did you decide to sell those properties?
I thought I needed some cash to come up and start my business. The reality was I didn't need that money at all. I was making enough money to live. But having that buffer in the bank psychologically probably helped me.
We talk about that a lot. And when you did decide to go out on your own, obviously there's implications in terms of what you can borrow. Did that go into your thinking much, or did you think, it'll pay off in the long term?
I just had a mindset that I was going to make it work, and I wanted to be in business, and I wanted to have those outcomes, have an office. I just wanted it. And I didn't think about it. Probably much like most of my property investment journey, which has helped me. Didn't think about it too much. So I'm in here, and I'm advising people how to make money out of property. And we're starting to come in to the biggest boom that New Zealand's ever seen, and probably the longest boom. So this is starting, probably that boom started about 2000, 17 and ran right through to 2021.
Yeah.
And so I'm helping people make money, and I'm helping them do the things that I'd already learned by this point for certain: deploy capital, add value, revalue, go again.
Yeah.
And whilst I'm in that property space, what I'm seeing is that an accountant is not getting paid very well for this. But people like real estate agents, mortgage brokers, lawyers, are all getting paid really well for it. And that's where the mortgage business came about. So we started climbing up the value chain. And then, as you know, once we got into that, the full wealth creation piece would not be complete without a wealth advisor.
Charismatic wealth advisor.
Yeah. Full of beans wealth advisor.
Yes. A loud wealth advisor.
Very loud wealth advisor. And so that was Lighthouse in totality. And somewhere in that sort of probably about year 3 of business, I realised that I was telling and showing people how to make money that I could easily do myself.
Yeah.
So first Auckland property came along in Mount Albert, and this was the very last property I did anything on myself. This was bought with AJ, who is my cousin and also a mortgage director here, and we took 3 weeks off work to renovate it. And by off work, I mean we worked in the morning and worked at night. And it was really fun, but of course 3 weeks took 6 weeks. And I remember AJ was still working at the bank at that stage, and he had to go back to work. So I was left to finish it, and I remember I had to do the floors. We got these big sanders, and we're doing the floors, and then I had to lacquer it. And I kept stepping in the lacquer because the light wasn't right. And the whole thing was just a disaster. I remember thinking right then and then I would never do that again. So we stopped doing that, and that property it was doing really well because we're still in the cycle. And I think we paid 1.3 for that property, and it's worth about 2.2 now. So it shows you the power of compounding returns over time. And if we go back to that mortgagee sale property, 305,000, that property is now worth about $1.1 million.
Yes. So and that is why we don't like selling assets.
Yes, correct.
Every time I speak to someone, they're like, when we're doing the first home buyers thing, and they're like, oh, yeah, then I'll sell this and get another one. I'm like, or we could keep that and get another one. And they're like, why would you not just sell? And I'm like, we'll talk about it over time. Yeah.
So the real big break for me in my investment portfolio came with Christchurch. So this earthquake sequences in Christchurch created what's referred to as the as-is, where-is market.
Yeah.
And I stumbled across that probably a bit like a lot of stuff on my property journey quite by chance. So I went down to Christchurch. I was working with some Christchurch clients. One of them helped manage as-is, where-is repairs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and he just said to me after a meeting, so I'm doing a property down the road, you want to come see? And I was like, yeah, I'll come see. I'm a property guy. I'd like to see. Anyway, I get there, and it's a beautiful property. It's not what I expected when I was thinking as-is, where-is.
You're
I'm
thinking it's
like,
rubble.
I'm thinking half rubble.
Yeah.
Cracks in the wall, everything. And it's a beautiful house. And so I just started asking him some questions, like, how much you pay for this? He's like, 500,000. I was like, how much? And I could tell straight away this property was worth well more than 500,000. I was like, how much are you spending on this? He's like, 100,000. I was like, okay. So what's the end game? He's like, 950.
Yeah. Light bulb.
So I remember ringing AJ. I'm like, I've just been at this meeting, and I saw an as-is property, and I think this is a really great opportunity. Do you think you can fund one?
Yeah.
And he gave me the flippant, I can do that.
Yeah.
So I got him.
Yeah.
I ring up one of our clients, Bonnie Stone, who's a real estate agent down there, and I was like, hey, can you get me an as-is, where-is property? And she's like, of course. Give me 5 minutes, because there were heaps of them back then.
Yeah, I got hundreds.
Yeah. So she rings me back literally 5 minutes later. She's like, I've got one, live in Woodville in Edgware. And I was like, cool. So I go and have a look at it. And it's a big 1,000 square metre section. Yeah. It's got a bungalow on the front, nothing on the back.
Beauty.
And I'm like, how much is this property? She's like, I think 350 would have it.
As the eyes wide.
Yeah. And I was like, cool. So anyway.
The poker face.
Yeah. I was like, yeah.
I'll give you 360.
Yeah. And this is right before everything started going to auction in Christchurch. And I remember putting an offer on it and coming back to the office and being like, can you fund this now, AJ? And I remember his face. And anyway, he got it funded. Yeah. And this is where I learned the biggest lesson is about creating wealth in property. Yeah. Is this debt arbitrage piece. Yeah. So it's buying something that's undervalued. And there's lots of properties in New Zealand that are undervalued. Yeah. Deferred maintenance. Yeah. Earthquake damage. Leaky. Yeah. Family. Yeah. Lots of places you can get a property that's undervalued. Yeah. Second piece is about debt. So we started funding these in second tier lenders. Yeah. So not main bank. And when we went, we go and fix them, repair them. A lot of them were pretty easy repairs. bought for that one 355. I think the in value was like 650. Spend like 100.
Yeah.
Take it back to main bank at 650. We were starting to roll our deposits out, and so my culmination of my journey to that point had allowed me to realise that this was a huge opportunity. Within that year, we'd done 18 as-is properties.
Yeah.
In a 12 months.
Wow.
Just so many.
If you look back on the and
we kept them all.
Yeah. If you look back on the mindset of the people at Christchurch at that time as well, they were probably thinking about a million different things. And probably creating wealth was not very high on that list, I guess, as well. So,
well, a lot of those people just wanted to get rid of those assets. Or the insurance companies or anyone was like, I don't want to put my hands on this anymore. I've had enough of it. Yeah.
Really common question I got was, why didn't they just repair it themselves? Yeah. And it's because they'd had enough of it. In the beginning, the insurance companies said they were going to repair them.
Yeah.
Then it dragged on, and then they realised they couldn't repair them all. Then they had like at least a year to get a settlement.
Yeah.
But these guys got, how the market was created, these guys got market value for their property, got to keep it. Then they sell it to someone like me for land value.
Yeah.
yeah.
So they're doing really well.
Right.
They're doing really well. So there was no, animosity from any of these people. They were like, take it.
Yeah.
No, we were down in Christchurch last week and we were talking to a guy we know down there who's in the insurance game, and he did the same thing.
Yeah.
He was like, bought them for 330, spent 60, sell them for 680.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I know a few people who did really, really well at it as wearers.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was probably what what cemented for me the strategy behind building wealth and property. It's two things. It's buying a property and being able to manage the debt. And then the second part is when it is appropriate, it's recycling the debt and buying again. And for me, that journey took 9 years.
Yeah. So if we fast forward to now, I want to talk about your property goals going forward in a second.
Yes.
But can you just give us a bit of an idea of kind of what your portfolio looks like now?
Yes, the portfolio is...
And this isn't recorded by Inland Revenue, so don't worry.
Yeah. What's
or the FM.
It's capital anyway.
Yeah.
So the property sits probably... But I actually don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but it shows how to touch I am with it. We've got someone who manages it all full time, but over 30 properties, millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of property, sitting at about a 60-40 LVR.
Yeah.
So pretty good.
The really interesting thing when you talk about that as well is you started, what did you say your first salary was?
Yeah, 28K.
28K,
Yeah.
Came from a household with no education around money. And if you think about it over a period of time and you go $300,000 houses and you go, this old geezer's been in the game 10 years. I mean, when I talk about 10-year wealth creation plans, that ain't that long.
No.
And you think about the power of inflation over that time, the power of education, taking one step forward after the next.
Yes.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and taking action.
Yeah.
And also like how overnight success is never overnight.
Yeah.
And that's why I think this is really important for people, is when people see the end position, they go, Dad must have bought it for him.
Yeah.
He's been like this the whole time. Like, how was Remuera High School growing up? But it's not like that. It's like, if you are smart about it, have some good guidance, take action early, that's when you get to the wealth creation.
Yeah.
Your story is, I did this, and then 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 boom. Was there periods of time where you thought, I'm just going to sit here and do nothing for a period?
Yep, we're currently in one of those periods, to be honest, although I'm not doing nothing, but on the buy and hold side I am. But no, I've always been someone with a bit of go forward.
Yeah.
I was always working in the business. I was always doing my chores, making my bed. But there's definitely been periods where I've gone, shit, this is hard.
Yeah.
And I've watched like people who maybe just have a good job, a couple of good jobs in one house, go and buy a beach house, or they've got nice cars. And I held off getting nice cars, having nice things for a lot later.
Yeah.
And that's when it was hard.
Yeah. And that's probably a bit of if you've ever seen Matt's Instagram, there would definitely be a misconception, I'd say, that you've kind of got all of these nice things. And a lot of people that have all of these nice things are financing them in a way where they have no wealth behind them, right?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the delayed gratification you had to go to and go, hey, I've actually got some money on paper now. I could go and buy my McLaren or buy my holiday home, do something cool, but I'm going to keep going on this journey for the long-term gains.
Yeah, and I think that was the hardest thing for me. It was when I had created an amount of wealth that I could reasonably have lived really comfortable. It was actually going again and deploying that capital again. And I've done it again and again and again. And finally now, after this 10-year period, I've spent a couple of years really enjoying it. And I have nice cars and nice things and a holiday a bit. And I feel like I earned it. Whether it looks like I earned it or not is irrelevant.
Well, it's always overnight success, like you said, right?
Yeah, but look, welcome to the internet, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to just, flippantly dismiss people,
But also this year I've had a good lesson, and it's not always good. This year's been very tough for a lot of us. Business-wise, it's been tough. And property-wise, over the last 6 months, had to make a lot of decisions within the portfolio and burn a lot of cash flow for the longer goal. So interest rates are going up. And on a huge portfolio, we're talking, what is the debt? The debt's probably around the 16 to 18 million mark, maybe
so if
more.
You think about that in terms of every time, 16 to 18 million, let's conservatively say 16
and that excludes like personal properties. And, I've got about 3 or 4 personal properties that I own as well.
If you think about an interest rate rise of 1% on that, and what that looks like for the cash flow of the portfolio, how much sleep you're getting at night, the decisions you can make around the rest of your life, that's a fairly stressful proposition. And so when people say, it's property, it's a passive income. Yeah, you can aim for passive income, but if you want to seriously grow your wealth, it is a business. You've got to treat it like a business, and it's going to be stressful.
0.5% rise equals about 150 grand a year.
The other piece as well is all of these council rates increasing as well.
Everything increasing, And then add interest deductibility removal on top, and suddenly you've got a big beast that you've got to go, well, my long-term wealth creation goal was X, but how do I manage it? So we made some decisions at the end of last year that we sold the best property and the worst property off the books. Took that capital, paid down a bit of debt, then we took some of it into our property development business, which we'll talk about later, and then we started shuffling loans. We talked to our mortgage advisors. And we said, right, can we put some onto interest only? Can we extend the term on some of them? So that the plan is to hold the line, protect the balance sheet. Because you can't be in long-term wealth creation if you don't have the assets long-term.
So that's how you're managing higher interest rates.
Yeah, exactly. So and what that means is that I'm spending quite a bit more of my own money on interest at the moment. I've got to put heaps more money into that business to keep it moving.
And you just doing it at a higher level.
Exactly. And but I understand, at least through my education, through the time that I've spent in the market, that this won't last forever. It's really important, if you're struggling a bit at the moment, to talk to your mortgage broker, talk to your wealth advisor, get a plan. Don't just run out and sell in a depressed market and make a loss or make less of a gain than you would have. Hold the line.
Cool. I've got 2 more questions before we wrap up. I know for certain this must be our longest episode ever, been super duper interesting. The first one is, you've got this portfolio. What are your goals when it comes to property moving forward?
So at the moment, we have moved to property development full time.
Cool.
And the goal was to have a property development company. Buy and hold is very much gone on pause at the moment.
Okay. We will come to property development in a second. Last question is tips for people who are thinking about starting their property journey, for somebody who's done a lot in 10 years. But once again, 10 years isn't that long of a period of time.
No, it isn't. And I barely remember it now. It's gone that quick. I think the first tip is don't just listen to your neighbour, your parents, or anyone else who says that you can't do it. And even commonly, you guys will see it, people come in and they don't think they can do anything when actually they can. So the first thing is approach it like you can do it, and then if you can't do it, maybe put a plan in place to do it. And the second thing is, don't be afraid of the debt part. I know that people really struggle with debt, but the world's economic system is built on it, for right or for wrong. And the sooner you become comfortable with it, and the sooner you treat it like something to manage in your life, the better off you'll be.
And what a time to get started as well, right?
Well, if you start in the hard time, imagine how easy it's going to be when it gets better. I've got lots of people that I know with that mindset at the moment who are like, it's a tough year, we're just going to crush it, and when it gets easier again, we're going to absolutely catapult.
And that's the thing. And during these times, we say it quite a bit, it's easy to throw out the Warren Buffett quotes of, be fearful when others are greedy. And that's like, it is another thing to go out and do it. It is risky. You're going to be going against all of your friends who are like, no, just hold on, you'll be fine. Pay down your mortgage.
Media.
Yeah.
Counter-cyclical investing is the hardest thing ever because everyone's saying don't do it.
Yep.
But everyone knows that if you do it now, when you come out of the cycle, you're going to be so much better off.
Yeah.
And while they say don't do it now, down the track they'll go, geez, didn't you get lucky?
Yes,
Started."
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so if you are looking for a property accountant, I mean, you couldn't get any better in terms of the experience we're talking about with Matt. So if you are looking for an accountant to go with you on your property journey, please make sure to reach out to us at Lighthouse. We are also going to have a second part of this episode where we're going to talk about Matt had a very significant change in his property journey where he started talking about property development, and there's a whole bunch of other lessons that we can talk about there as well.
Huge lessons. Yeah.
Great. So Matt, thank you very much for joining us. Please make sure to subscribe, give us a review, and we'll catch you next time.
Cheers.
Thanks.